He's the worst matchup for Sean. The worst matchup on paper for Sean in that division is Merab.
I'm gonna show everybody my striking.
He's getting knocked out regardless.
Merab Dvalishvili has been called a nightmare matchup for Sean O'Malley. And in this video we're going to take a look at whether or not this is the case, weaknesses that myself and others have identified in Merab's game, and whether Sean O'Malley has what it takes to last 5 minutes with this cardio monster. Sean O'Malley has proved doubters wrong time and time again. I had question marks myself about whether or not he was truly championship material. I think the fight against Peter Yan was a big turning point in a lot of people's minds. Whether or not you thought he won that fight, either way it was a razor thin decision. I don't think it would have been a robbery for either guy. I think that he gained a lot of respect there, and that really put him at the top of the division. Since then, he's just been flawless. The Chito Vera fight was a masterclass. The Aljamain Sterling fight, which we are going to come to a lot in this video, because Aljamain Sterling is teammates with Merab. We can take a lot from that fight, but in that fight in particular, he stuffed takedowns, he was an assassin when he needed to be, and he got the finish against a guy who was truly considered to be the best bantamweight at that time. So let's take a look at the man he's facing, Merab Dvalishvili. His gas tank is probably the best I've ever seen in the UFC. And again, I'm going to bring up Peter Yan, because it was their fight between Merab and Peter Yan that really made me realise this guy's a serious contender. Beforehand, I'd seen him get through fairly mid-tier opposition, but in that fight, Peter Yan, someone who I really rate highly, he just put on a masterclass of cardio and pressure. I'm not going to say wrestling, because he did shoot a lot of takedowns and miss a lot of them, but it was a masterclass in both cardio and pressure. Peter Yan just folded under that pressure. And you know, he's the type of fighter who likes to take a couple of rounds to really get going, but Merab just did not allow that. So I think we need to start this fight breakdown and fight prediction by taking a look at Merab's wrestling and how O'Malley can deal with it. As we mentioned in the Peter Yan fight, Merab does have the ability to constantly shoot for takedowns over the course of 15 or 25 minutes, and this is something that Sean O'Malley will need to be really aware of. O'Malley hasn't really shown weaknesses in cardio before. I can't recall a fight where he's got really tired in the past, but he did get taken down many times by Peter Yan. So whilst his takedown defence is generally very good, and he did stuff 2 takedown attempts from Aljamain Sterling, we know that he can get taken down, and we know that Merab's going to constantly be there, putting the pressure on and going for those takedowns. Merab has said that he's going to stand and strike with Sean O'Malley, but let's face it, when things start to not go his way, which is more than likely in this kind of fight, he is going to shoot for those takedowns, and chances are he will have success over the course of 25 minutes. Now, what does Merab do really well with the takedowns? And the answer is that he gets the takedowns in the first place. I don't think we can pay too much attention to his ground and pound threat or his submission threat, because really they're not quite at the level of his ability to actually get the takedowns. His real strength is getting those takedowns and scoring off those takedowns, and we know that might not be enough in this fight, especially with the new scoring criteria. Peter Yan generally has better ground and pound than Merab, but even his takedowns weren't really scoring against O'Malley, and this is something that Merab will really need to be conscious of when he does take O'Malley down. And I say when because I do believe that at least on a couple of occasions over the course of 5 rounds, if it goes that long, he will get O'Malley down. He really needs to pass the eye test for the judges, and it could even involve exaggerating the ground and pound shots, show that he's doing damage, throw some elbows in there. If he cuts O'Malley on the ground, then he could steal rounds with that. But if he just relies on taking down O'Malley, doing very little with it, we know that O'Malley's really strong at getting back onto his feet, and that will not score with the judges. So Merab's path to victory will definitely be through the wrestling, but he needs to show effectiveness, whether that's strong ground and pound when he gets the top position, or at least threatening submissions, as we know that that could steal rounds for him, and I can't really see him stopping O'Malley during this fight. As we mentioned, Merab said that he's going to try and stand with Sean O'Malley. This is a terrible idea. He might just be saying it for the views, for the clicks, to get in O'Malley's head, but if he chooses to do this, this will just be a disaster. We know how good Sean O'Malley is at setting up those traps. We can look at the Eddie Wineland fight, which is a great example of when O'Malley faked that left uppercut, brought Wineland's hands down and then caught him over the top with the right hand. That's just a masterful display. You can watch that on slow-mo. It looks better each time you see it. But let's take a look at the Aljamain Sterling finish, because this is an example and probably the best example you can get of how a fight might play out against Merab. Aljamain Sterling and Merab are teammates. The games are not too dissimilar. They're not identical. They're not too dissimilar. They're both wrestling heavy guys. Sterling definitely has more of a submission threat. Merab has more of a takedown threat generally, as in he'll go for more takedowns. But if you take a look at the finish from O'Malley to Aljamain Sterling, you can see how Aljamain Sterling lunged in with that right hand. O'Malley just slid out the way. He really invited Aljamain Sterling onto his own right hand. Again, O'Malley's striking is so crisp. Probably at least top 3 in the UFC currently. You can say Pereira, Adesanya. Who else am I? I'm probably forgetting some great strikers as well, but they're definitely up there. So he really invited Aljamain Sterling onto that right hand. And I can see Merab falling into the same traps. Merab loves blitzing forward. He's reckless. He doesn't set up takedowns, traditionally with a few clever shots and then goes for them. He does sort of rush forward and leave himself open. And we are going to come on to that. I mentioned in this video that if Sean O'Malley does this, then he'll win the fight. And this is exactly what I'm going to be talking about. But yeah, I don't think it's a good idea for Merab to stand and trade with Sean O'Malley for any prolonged periods of time. O'Malley's striking is just so advanced, not only in the setting traps aspect, but he's got so many different weapons at his disposal. I remember the uppercuts he was throwing in for the Chris Moutinho fight. He's shown spinning kicks back in the Contender Series days. And against Chito Vera, which was an absolute striking masterclass, we saw him mix up so many different types of attacks. The jumping knees through the middle, which could definitely feature in this fight. Sean O'Malley will definitely throw these jumping knees, but whenever you leave the ground, whenever you leave your body extended like that, it does give potential to being taken down. So I can see O'Malley definitely going for a couple of jumping knees in this, which is a good counter wrestling technique. But yeah, I definitely don't think Merab will stand with Sean O'Malley. But O'Malley wants to keep it on the feet, as we know, for as long as possible and deliver one of his knockout blows. And it's not just the right hand. It could be a left hook, and there's a reason why I'm saying it could be a left hook. It could be a right hand, it could be a kick, it could be a knee. His attacks are just so diverse, and I cannot wait to see how O'Malley decides to pick apart Merab in this fight. When it comes to toughness and durability, there were question marks historically over Sean O'Malley. I remember in that fight where he broke his foot. Fortunately, his opponent at the time, his name's slipping my mind currently, he went for the takedown, which was the lowest IQ move I'd probably seen in the UFC up until this point. And the calf kick from Chito Vera, which hit his perennial nerve, which caused him to get drop foot and lose that fight that he heavily disputes he ever lost. So O'Malley there were questions over his durability, over his toughness, and that will need to be on full display against Merab. Merab is a guy who makes a fight ugly. He'll make it nasty. You need to be tough here. If you're not tough, and I'm not saying PTN isn't tough, but he broke in that fight. He folded. If O'Malley's having no success in stopping the takedowns over the first 2.5, 3 rounds, then he could just give up the last 2 rounds. We know how it can be. We know how tiring it can be, constantly being on the back foot. O'Malley's so good at being on his bike and moving around and not getting taken down. But if Merab starts to find a rhythm, find a pattern for these takedowns, it could be a really long night for O'Malley. I don't think that the toughness is really a question for O'Malley, but with anyone, they're only human. If Merab can constantly take you down, the effort it takes to constantly get back up, even if there isn't a true submission threat there, could be a determining factor in the way this fight plays out. Merab, toughness, he's a tough guy. There's no question about that. Yeah, he'll constantly be in your face. He won't quit. He won't give up. However, there are question marks over his chin, and this is the area of the video that I really wanted to go into. And it's the area that makes me question whether or not there is a glaring weakness in Merab Dvalishvili's game. Now, if you look at these two clips side by side, they've been doing the rounds on social media. You can see Merab getting caught by the exact same shot in both occasions. These are fights between Merab and Henry Cejudo and Merab and Marlon Moraes. As you can see, Merab rushes in, as we touched upon before, with his hands low. That right hand takes an age to get back to his chin, and in the meantime he gets caught by cracking left hooks. Now, O'Malley will be watching this. I'm sure both teams have studied this video, but O'Malley's team will definitely see this as an opening. O'Malley has a great left hook. All his striking weapons are very, very high level, but he will see the opening here. He's quicker than both Cejudo and Moraes with the left hook, and I can see him really exploiting this. If Merab is careless moving forward, he could eat one of these left hooks. And what's more, we often look at the shots that strikers are vulnerable to, like on this occasion, but let's also take a look at how Merab reacts once he's been hit with this shot. Again, in this video, if you just take a look, once Merab gets connected with this left hook, he takes the same stumbling back steps, and his hands are so far away from his face after taking both these shots. For a rangy fighter like Sean O'Malley, the head kick or some kind of front kick through the middle is on. For Moraes and Cejudo, who are shorter guys, it might take them a couple of steps to close the distance. But Sean O'Malley, this combination of a left hook followed by a right head kick is hot. In this video, you can just see how on that combination is. And if Merab reacts the same way after being caught by O'Malley, O'Malley will be looking for the kicks. His length, his range, puts him at such an advantage in the bantamweight division. He's 5'11" in a division that's dominated by 5'6" to 5'8" guys. On another note, that's why I think him against Corey Sandhagen would be such an interesting fight. I would give O'Malley the advantage currently based on recent form. I think Corey Sandhagen does have some kind of issues with really going for it and killer instinct, whereas O'Malley, he's said so many times before, all he's looking for is that knockout shot. So could this left hook be Merab's kryptonite? Could it be Sean O'Malley's best path to victory? Let me know what you guys think. Personally, I do think that Merab's team will have looked at this. Definitely in the first round, round and a half. I think when Merab does come into attack, he will be more defensively sound than we've seen here. But you know what? O'Malley's got such a knack of getting fighters to fall into his traps. I can see him baiting Merab to rush in, maybe give him some kind of indication that he does have an opening, and then close that door and finish Merab. The odds makers currently have Merab as a favourite, and it is based on a lot of MMA pundits in the scene, like we saw with Joe Rogan, saying that Merab is a nightmare matchup for Sean O'Malley. But it does seem on the YouTube side, and I'm not trying to claim an expertise on either side, but it does seem on the YouTube side that they're favouring Sean O'Malley. So it's really interesting to see who comes out on top in this matchup. I think it'll be really interesting. It's the first UFC event at the Sphere in Las Vegas, so we're going to see what that's all about. I know the MMA guru did a video slamming the event at the Sphere, saying it's a rich man's club and things like that. But I'm interested, I'm intrigued as a viewer to see what it'll look like. It's something different anyway, isn't it? We've also got Brian Ortega and Diego Lopez on the card. I think that'll be a really interesting one. Brian Ortega is just one of those fighters I can't help but root for. I think he's really up against it in this fight, but I can see a similar performance to the Korean Zombie, to Brian Ortega's fight against the Korean Zombie. I can see Brian Ortega, he's gone away, worked on his game, and I think we're going to see a masterclass from Brian Ortega. I can see him getting, I'm going to go for a stoppage arm triangle for Brian Ortega, and then we've got the co-main event, Valentina Shevchenko and against Alex Grasso. Tough one. Mexican Independence Day, pro Grasso crowd. I think Valentina Shevchenko is going to take the decision on this one. I think this could be one of her last fights. She might get a big money fight, you know, against either Amanda Nunes coming back or Kayla Harrison, you know, some kind of fight like that, some catchweight fight, who knows. But I think that'll be an exciting one. And then the main event, I'm going to go for a Sean O'Malley 3rd round TKO. Let me know how you think this fight's going to go down.